Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this episode of Just Another Year Chicago. My name is Nick Rohde. I am joined alongside my co-host, London Beth, and today it is draft week. It is officially Monday of draft week. London and I have been looking forward to this for a super long time. Chicago Bears fans, we definitely know you've been looking forward to this for a long time. A lot of anticipation. Are the Bears going to move up? Are they going to move back? Who are they going to take with the 20th? Are they going to get the 4th, the 8th? What are they going to do? But today, London and I are hitting on the key areas of need for the Chicago Bears. There's a lot going around out there. Do they want a cornerback? Do they want an offensive tackle? Do they want a quarterback, a wide receiver? Who knows? We're going to break it down today. And don't forget that this upcoming Wednesday, we are doing another mock draft. That is our official final mock draft. London and I are very excited for it, and you don't want to miss out on it. But let's just get into it. The number one area of need, London, what do you see the Bears need entering this draft?
Yeah, Nick, I'm excited. It's draft week. Like you have no idea.
Baby. It's draft
I woke up this morning and I put my Bears stuff on right away. I probably will wear Bears stuff every single day all the way through this week because hopefully we can have just a magical draft coming up. But going into our biggest needs, I know in our mock drafts we've gone over a lot of different kinds of things that we've talked about. There's kind of a similar theme, all that kind of different stuff. I kind of have to go back to old reliable. Okay. I was told one time by a couple people that, are draft analysts and, they do different kinds of stuff with scouting and all that kind of stuff. And they said the three most important things for any NFL team in this direct order are A, quarterback, B, someone to protect that quarterback, and then someone to get after the opposing quarterback. In Chicago, for some odd reason, we always have someone that gets after the quarterback. Usually it's the other two that we're lacking on. Thankfully, due to some rotation stuff, we do have some people that can protect the quarterback. So it lands on one thing, and that is we need a QB. Chicago needs a QB. I mean, the state of Illinois needs a QB. The NFL needs Chicago to get a franchise QB. I mean, I need them to before I absolutely lose my mind and sanity, especially if my buddy, who's a big Jets fan, if they get a franchise quarterback before us, I will not hear the end of it. So just solely based on that, quarterback is the most important position in the NFL. We're not going to get Trevor Lawrence. We're not going to get Zach Wilson. Clearly, it just came out today. The 49ers are down to either Mac Jones or Trey Lance, leaving someone like Justin Fields or whoever doesn't get picked out of Mac Jones or Trey Lance to slip down into maybe that 8 to 10 area. And I know the Patriots have been talking about trading up. A lot of people think they will. I think Ryan Pace is going to save his job. I think he wants that extension. I'm somewhat 60-40 split. More than it was more 40-60 that we possibly can and will trade up to get that QB that slips. And so overall, number one most important thing in this draft is we need a quarterback because, like I said, if the New York Jets get a franchise quarterback in this draft and we still don't have one, I will not hear the end of it.
So let me go back on that really fast before I get into like my key area. Like, you big names out. We're not getting Trevor Lawrence. We're not getting Zach Wilson. It's just not happening. Someone put in a mock draft that the Bears are going to somehow get Zach Wilson. It's impossible. Throw that out the door. It's not happening. So Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, gone. Your number one area of need is quarterback. So if Mac Jones gets selected by the 49ers, that leaves Trey Lance and Justin Fields in for the number 4 pick or potentially the number 8 pick, though the Detroit Lions are rumored to take a quarterback even after getting Jared Goff. So you have let's say that it seems like the Niners are more in on Mac Jones. Let's say that Mac Jones, Justin Fields are on the board. You have the 4th pick. Who are you taking out of those two?
Okay, so I would probably have to go with Justin Fields.
Okay.
Just because I've heard rumors and I know a lot of analysts and a lot of people have talked about, and I know we've talked about it on prior podcasts with the Chicago Bears. We need someone due to our lack of offensive weapons. We need someone that can improvise, someone that can get outside the pocket, someone that can run. And that was one thing that, RIP Trubisky did that was actually good for our offense. He was able to run. He was able to improvise. He was able to, get outside the pocket. And I just think since we're not a super offense. I mean, we are bringing back a few guys, Cohen, we just got, Godwin, we are bringing back some guys that are talented, but still we're not at the, Tampa Bay Buccaneers or the Chiefs or, teams like that just are, their third best, fourth best receiver could start on half of the NFL teams. We're not there.
No.
And because of that, I think we need someone that can improvise. That if we're on goal line, we don't have to hand it off to David Montgomery 3 times and get stuffed. We could do a quarterback option and let Justin Fields run it into the end zone.
So I agree. Out of those guys, I'm taking Justin Fields. You need a mobility in today's NFL quarterback. Patrick Mahomes can do it. Deshaun Watson can do it. Aaron Rodgers can even move with his feet. Trubisky was great at it. And, Lamar Jackson. You have all these big name quarterbacks. I mean, yes, Trubisky was technically a big name quarterback because he was in a big market. Now he was playing for the Buffalo Bills as a backup. But they were all mobile. They were able to make things happen with their feet because defenses have become smarter. This isn't just a 3-4 defense anymore where someone will be randomly open. So London's number one overall area of need is quarterback. I'm going to go against that. And I do have a quarterback in my top 3. There's no doubt about that. The Bears do have a need at quarterback. But my number one is offensive tackle. The Bears, and I am the Bears fan that is afraid of the risk. And there's a lot of good points out there saying that this is the last shot potentially for a defense like this, a special teams like this, an overall roster to win a Super Bowl and to go to the playoffs is you need that quarterback now. Here's my issue though, is Justin Fields or any of those kind of guys is going to take at least a year or two to develop. In a year or two, you're kind of in a pickle where half your defense is above 30. You have to start trading guys away, even though Montgomery, Kmet, Roquan Smith, Eddie Jackson, Jalen Johnson are all below 27 years old. So you still have time to build, even if something does go wrong. But I'm going offensive tackle because if you give a quarterback a good offensive line, he will win. Look at Tom Brady. Look at Aaron Rodgers. Look at Peyton Manning. Look at all these great quarterbacks that have won multiple Super Bowls, not Aaron Rodgers. We don't talk about that. But Ben Roethlisberger, all those other guys, they have had great offensive lines. You give a quarterback enough time, he will make a play. These guys are professionals. They literally, this is their job. They are good enough to be in the NFL, and there's obviously a reason for that. And a lot of these guys were studs in college. And guess what happens in college? You get guys that are all young, talented offensive linemen. This year is stacked with potential, anyone could be a first-round lineman for the first 3 rounds in the projections because they're all good in their own ways, whether it be with their feet, their hands, their speed, their size, you name it, we got it. But the Bears are one offensive line piece away from being a complete unit. And like London was saying earlier, there's been a rotation of different players and everyone seems to have finally found their spot. So let me break it down for you really fast, London. Left tackle, you have Charles Leno Jr., was actually one of the better left tackles in the second half of the season. We've talked about that before. He really picked it up because he was all over the place. He was the only lineman that knew what he was doing for a while. So he was constantly checking on White hair at guard, or not White hair at guard. He was checking on Bars at guard, Mustafa, and you name it. He was checking everyone to be intact. So he wasn't able to just focus on his position. At left guard, now you have Cody Whitehair, who's the number 3 left guard in the NFL behind Quentin Nelson. And I can't remember the other name of the lineman. We hit on it before, but he was the number 3 left guard in the NFL past week 8 because we moved him because Sam Mustipher, who I'm hitting on now, went to center. And Sam Mustipher has been a complete steal, an undrafted free agent out of Notre Dame, played alongside Quentin Nelson. And London and I have hit on it before. Notre Dame linemen are beasts in the NFL. They always have been. They're beasts in college, and they're really, really good in the NFL as well. So you already have your whole left side and center covered. Then you go to right guard. A lot of people that forget about this guy, James Daniels, Bears second-round pick 2 years ago. He was a stud as a rookie. People were like, man, this guy is like what we've been looking for. What a steal by Pace. Again, Pace does well after the first round besides Roquan Smith. James Daniels was hurt almost all of 2020 minus game 1. You put James Daniel back out there, now you have 4 done. The only thing that you need is a right tackle. Right tackle is a much less and you have an experienced left tackle. That's what you want. So draft a rookie, have him start at right tackle, let him get used to it. When Leno's done after this season, when his contract expires, then you go out and you move him to left tackle. He has a year under his belt, and then you either draft another tackle later in this draft, which is completely stacked with tackles, and then you have your offensive line for next year already set up. Now, that was a lot. But also, you have a good offensive line. You give David Montgomery, Tyreek Cohen, the Williams from Kansas City. you're giving the whole Bears running back room the opportunity to just run like crazy. And Matt Nagy loves those special plays. After we lost Tyreek Cohen, the offense went down because Matt Nagy has really focused this offense on, the human joystick and players like him in this offense. So in my number one overall need, I think it's offensive tackle because Andy Dalton is an experienced quarterback who can make good decisions when he has a good offensive line. He proved it in Cincinnati. I think he can prove it again in Chicago. And we can go out and get a guy like Kellen Mond in later rounds. So I'm going with offensive tackle first. I know that was a lot, but, London, I see you shaking your head. Yes. I agree a quarterback is definitely a need, but, we're one piece away on the offensive line with a tackle. So that's why I'm going with that.
And I know we talked really quick before we go to the second topic. I know we talked before in prior mocks and stuff like that. I mean, out of the last 15 years, teams with the top 5 best offensive lines in the NFL go to the Super Bowl. You know what I mean? They go to the Super Bowl. It is what it is. Like Tom Brady last year had the best center in the league, the best right guard, and I think the best right tackle. And same with the Chiefs. If you look at the Chiefs offensive line coming up this year, it's Kyle Long, Orlando Brown Jr., Joe Tunley from the Patriots. I mean, it is a stacked offensive line. How they got Orlando Brown Jr., we'll still never know.
Steal.
But I mean, yes, offensive line is important, and getting somebody that can shore up that line, especially because James Daniels is coming back. And like I said, look at our offensive line. A lot of Midwestern boys there. Cody Whitehair, Kansas, Notre Dame, Iowa. A lot of Midwestern thick boys there. Love that.
Two C's on those boys. So, London, I just went on my rant. Who are you going with as number 2 on your priority list for Bears to draft in this draft?
Yeah. So, Nick, I know we went opposite on the first one. We're going opposite probably on the last one. This second one, you and I were locked in on the second biggest need for the Chicago Bears, and that is hands down cornerback. Again, a glaring thing that we are missing due to the free agency and just kind of what played out was that we lost Kyle Fuller, our number 1 corner, to the Denver Broncos. Of course, he went back to play with Vic. I mean, who wouldn't?
Can't blame him.
Bryce Callahan, first off, went there, had a phenomenal season this year coming off an injury. Now Kyle Fuller's going to go there, and guess what? He will probably have a great year under Vic. It is what it is. Vic loves defenses. He just plays good with corners. So I'm going corner. And I know you are also, and I know we can hit on. I'll name a couple different guys that, I know you have listed and you're going to kind of highlight on. I'll kind of highlight a couple more. So we're kind of looking, since it's the second need, we're thinking maybe second to third, fourth round of corners that we're kind of looking at. And the biggest thing, like I know, again, we always hit on in our mock draft, this cornerback draft is stacked. It's loaded, but that also means something that we always talk about with these corners and these wide receivers. Players are going to slip. I could see someone like Asante Samuel Jr. slipping to us in the second or third round. I know we talked a lot about, Aaron Robinson, a guy that, before we got into mock drafts, you didn't even know his name. And now kudos to you, out of UCF, we were watch tape. Another guy.
Dropping a little Easter egg there, London, for my mock draft.
Yep.
All right.
Slipped down a little bit there. Another guy that we haven't really talked about is Paul Alados, I think his name is. Cornerback out of Stanford, big guy, 6'1". And then I'm gonna completely butcher his name, so I'm not even gonna try to say it. But he is the cornerback from Syracuse, and his brother played in the NFL, and his name is Afidu Melifanu. And
8
so
out
again,
of 10 on pronunciation. Good job, London.
Yeah, thank you. Again, 6'2", 205, 41-inch vertical corner. So again, these kind of guys, if it was, if the cornerback draft this year wasn't so stacked on the top with the Patrick Surtain, the J.C. Horns of the world, these guys would probably sneak up into the later first round. But because it is such a stacked class, those guys are going to slip. They're going to be available in the second and third round. And again, we need to fill that position. Jalen Johnson came out, said, I'm ready to be the number 1 corner. I'm going to be back healthier, ready to go. He came out, I think I said it on Instagram or Twitter. That was really, really awesome because I think he will be that corner with what he showed, as long as he can just get rid of the holding penalties and the pass interference calls. So bringing somebody else in there, like we always say, Trufant, good pickup for the price. He's not the future. We need to bring somebody else in.
Yeah. So I 100% agree with you. The cornerback is just so deep in this draft. And here's something that a lot of people need to realize is that this is one of the most stacked quarterback drafts. Quarterback. I just said quarterback. Now I'm getting into cornerback. This is one of the most stacked quarterback drafts in recent years, probably in the last 5 years. Those quarterbacks had to go against these corners. And for some of these quarterbacks to have the games that they had, obviously they had to go against a very, very strong defensive back unit. And that's why this draft is so deep with corners. I agree with you. I think Samuel Jr. has a shot at making it to the second round, but that is if we go with a quarterback in the first round, if we trade up, there is no doubt in my mind we're going to go after him early in the second. There is no doubt in my mind. But he's a high priority target. It's hard to choose talent with these guys because a lot of big corners, and you know that I'm a big fan of big corners, got to guard guys like DJ Metcalf, Jefferson, like all these other big wide receivers. Tyreek Hill is fast. You know, you got to be big and fast in this NFL. So guys like Tyson Campbell from Georgia, Kelvin Joseph from Kentucky, Eric Stokes also from Georgia, and then Cameron Byam from California. I mean, all those names, big 6 foot plus corners, all almost nearly 200 pounds plus, fast, big hitters. I think a lot of them will be on the board in later rounds. So that's why I have it at number 2, because the Bears can use their first round pick, or if they end up trading back and getting even more trade assets to just explode in the second round, I think that they have a shot to still land that key corner. That being said, who knows? Ryan Pace can do what Ryan Pace does and go and get a cornerback in the first round. Would any Bears fan like that? I put a vote out there, and literally 100% of Bears fans would lose their mind if we drafted a corner in the first round.
That was a good vote on Twitter. I saw that.
It would just be absolutely insane if we were to do that. But again, I'm not even in panic mode about the cornerback position. I literally am so obsessed with getting an offensive lineman right now to complete an offensive line that has a young offensive unit around it. Could be a good day. So, number 2 area of need, London and I are both hitting on corner. And like London said earlier, we're going to flip. So I'm going to go. So I start with offensive tackle, corner, and now I'm going into quarterback. London is going into offensive lineman right now. So let me go back on kind of what he was saying and kind of what I was saying earlier in regards to offensive line. Andy Dalton is an experienced quarterback, 3-time Pro Bowler, multiple 4,000-yard passing seasons on a very, very interesting Cincinnati franchise. Hit or miss franchise, but the last couple of years have been horrible. Absolutely horrible. Joe Burrow's there to save the day. Love Joe Burrow. I think he's the future for Cincinnati. And Andy Dalton once was that guy in Cincinnati. And he's not the future of the Chicago Bears by no means. But he's not Mike Glennon. I hate when people put Andy Dalton and Mike Glennon in the same category. Completely different players, completely different stats, completely different backgrounds. Andy Dalton is statistically the greatest quarterback to ever walk into Hallis Hall. Statistically. Now, there are good late round quarterbacks that we can go out and get. They would be first rounders if it wasn't for Zach Wilson, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, Trey Lance, you name it, Mac Jones. These guys would be first rounders in last year's draft potentially, and definitely next year's draft as of right now. So I think that the Bears are pretty okay with drafting a quarterback later since they have Andy Dalton. And I know people in the comments are going to go, no, he's not the answer. I am saying he is not the answer. But if the Bears want to be good this year and not lose trade assets for moving forward, worry about a quarterback in later rounds. Kellen Mond out of Texas A&M, strong arm, can move in the pocket. That's my guy, but that's just the facts that he is a good mobile, strong arm quarterback that can throw it up to Darnell Mooney if needed. Davis Mills. I didn't think much about this guy until I started looking more into him. Super strong arm, pretty impressive for a guy in college, but he's smart with his passing too. He went to Stanford, so that's already a plus for him, but he's a smart guy his mobility, But if you go out and draft an offensive lineman in the first round, you give him a good offensive line for the next couple of years, which the Bears would still have a very young, good offensive line, could work. Or Jamie Newman out of Georgia, mobile quarterback, has a cannon, played on a pretty good Georgia team. You know, we will be on the board. These guys will be on the board in early rounds, and we can snag them. But offensive tackle makes any quarterback better. Any good offensive line makes a quarterback better. Again, like London said, look at the statistics with Super Bowl ranked offensive lines, always in the top 5 in the league that respected year. London, you're going to tackle now. So why are you not so worried about the tackle in this draft?
It's just going to be, I mean, it's a revolving door that we kind of go back to every single mock draft, every single time we talk about needs, every single time we talk about the Chicago Bears. And that is what positions in this draft are so friggin' deep. Okay. Wide receiver, corner, offensive line. Okay. And so I'm kind of going to go against your quarterback and being the third one, and why it is okay if we draft a right tackle closer to the second or third or fourth round is because how deep they are.
Right.
I mean, we're not going to get, again, just talking through of kind of, who's going to be available, who's not. Sewell out of Oregon, not going to probably be available. No. Slater, second, third, fourth round, not going to be available. Darsaw, yeah, a guy that we talked about a lot out of Virginia Tech, who's probably somebody that you would love to see at that 20th pick. I don't think he's going to be available after the first round. So then you kind of get into guys who we've discussed before. The Walker Littles of the world, yes. The Tevin Jenkins of the world, the Dylan of the world from
Alex Leatherwood,
North Dakota State.
Leatherwood went down. Leatherwood lost a lot of draft capital because these guys exploded this year. I didn't mean to cut it off,
and then same with my favorite thing in the entire world, Liam, right tackle out of Notre Dame. He slipped a little bit. So the thing is with offensive tackles, I fully agree with you. If we could get a solid right tackle on our team, we are solidified. We will probably have a top 10 offensive line. But players like this, and honestly, if we could get in the third round or trade up into the third round or late second round and get somebody like Liam from Notre Dame, or somebody like Alex Leatherwood, or somebody like Walker Little out of Stanford, I think we're totally fine there, and they will still be 10-year starters for the Chicago Bears and will solidify that right side, which is a huge glaring gap. So again, if you trade up in the first round, you draft a QB like I think we should, you go get an A like a Justin Fields and stuff like that. You try to retain your second or third round pick this year, which we probably could. And then you draft a corner, and then you use the rest of the 6 rounds and maybe a third round to move up a little bit and go get a Walker Little. And I guarantee you one of those guys that we just listed off will still be good enough to play right tackle, because honestly, a lot of first round offensive tackles that have been in the last 10 years have not panned out. Most of the dominant offensive guards tackles, other than probably like Quentin Nelson or he's probably the only one I can really think of that was like an early first round pick that's really panned out, hasn't got hurt, continues to be the most dominant left guard in the NFL. Most of the ones that are like Hall of Fame level were drafted in later rounds because they didn't get as much wear and tear on their body in college. They came from smaller schools or just different schools that weren't going up against those elite defensive ends. Like I would say somebody like Cam Robinson who was out of Alabama. He was a high draft pick. He plays on the Jaguars. He's been injury ridden. He was a waste of a draft pick. And now, he's kind of somewhat revitalized his career. But the problem was he went to Alabama when they had like Derrick Henry. And so they ran the ball constantly. He had so much wear and tear on his body. It was unbelievable. So getting someone like Liam out of Notre Dame, or, Walker Little, who sat out and was able to, focus only on his body, and so that wear and tear of an offensive lineman just is not there, I think would be phenomenal. I think it would secure our right side of our line. And then if we can do that, if we can secure the right side of our line and, get somebody like James Daniels or Sam Mustipher, who were later picks, but are still phenomenal offensive line starters in the NFL, and also get a franchise quarterback, I'll lose my mind. I'll have one too many beers this weekend, and honestly, I'll just start screaming the Bears are going to go to the Super Bowl by Sunday morning.
Hey, that's the spirit, because Sundays are going to be back before we know it. It is almost May. It's going to be May, as Justin Timberlake would say. So We are getting close, and I think that we're gonna have a legitimate preseason this year. Fans are gonna be back in the stands. It's gonna be a very interesting year for the Chicago Bears. But just a quick recap: I myself am 1 to 3 from most important to least important. Even though all these are important, I'm going offensive tackle, cornerback, quarterback. London is flipping the script. He's going quarterback, offensive tackle. So with that, we are leading this into Wednesday's episode of our fourth and final mock draft for the Chicago Bears, all 7 rounds. Please stay tuned for that. You're not going to want to miss it, as we're really starting to dice things up a little bit here. But with that, London, thank you very much for joining, as always. And to you guys, thank you very much for watching this episode of Just Another Year Chicago. My name is Nick Rohde, joined alongside London Beth, and we'll see you guys on Wednesday.